The Israelites, led by Moses, journeyed through the wilderness. They were on a mission, a quest for a new home, a land promised by God. Moses, their leader, guided them with God's law and wisdom. But amidst their journey, a storm of discontent brewed within the camp. Miriam and Aaron, Moses' own siblings, began to question his authority. Their whispers turned into murmurs, and murmurs into open criticism. They questioned his marriage to a Cushite woman, but at its heart, their grievance stemmed from a desire for more power and a challenge to Moses' unique relationship with God. Miriam and Aaron, prominent figures themselves, felt overlooked, their own leadership overshadowed. This sibling rivalry, however, was no small matter. It was a direct challenge to God's chosen leader and, by extension, a challenge to God's plan. The Israelites were a community bound by faith, their journey dependent on their obedience to God and their trust in His chosen leader. This dispute threatened to unravel the very fabric of their community. The seeds of discontent, once sown, quickly took root, threatening to poison the hearts of the Israelites and jeopardize their journey to the Promised Land. The dispute did not escape God's notice. He saw the rebellion brewing in the hearts of His people, the challenge to His chosen servant, and so He intervened. God's presence, which resided within the Holy of Holies in the tabernacle, manifested visibly. He summoned Moses, Aaron, and Miriam to the entrance of the tabernacle. There, enveloped in a cloud of glory, God's presence descended. He spoke, His voice echoing with divine authority. God defended Moses, affirming him as His chosen servant, a man whom He spoke to face. God reminded Aaron and Miriam of their own roles, their own importance in His plan, but He rebuked them for challenging Moses, for failing to recognize the unique authority bestowed upon him. The earth trembled at His words, a testament to the gravity of their transgression. The cloud of God's glory lifted, revealing the consequences of Miriam's and Aaron's actions. Miriam's skin, once healthy and vibrant, was now covered in leprosy, a dreaded and disfiguring disease. She stood there, a stark reminder of the price of discontent and rebellion against God's chosen leadership. Aaron, witnessing his sister's affliction, was stricken with remorse. He pleaded with Moses to intercede on her behalf, acknowledging the gravity of their sin. Moses, ever compassionate, cried out to God for Miriam's healing, demonstrating the forgiveness and mercy that characterized his leadership. God heard Moses' plea and responded with a mixture of mercy and justice. Miriam's leprosy would be healed, but not immediately. She was to be confined outside the camp for 7 days, a period of isolation and reflection, a physical manifestation of her separation from God and the community. This act of divine discipline served as a stark warning to the Israelites. It highlighted the seriousness of challenging God's authority and the consequences of sowing discord within the community. The Israelites, witnessing Miriam's affliction and subsequent isolation, were reminded of the importance of unity and obedience. Section 5. A Land of Promise and Peril. Following Miriam's week of purification, the Israelites resumed their journey towards Canaan. This land, promised to them by God, flowed with milk and honey, a stark contrast to the harsh wilderness they had been traversing, but it was also a land inhabited by strong and numerous people, a formidable obstacle to their inheritance. To assess the situation, Moses chose 12 men, one from each tribe, to scout the land. These spies were to gather information about the inhabitants, the fortifications, and the land itself, a reconnaissance mission of utmost importance. Their report would determine the Israelites' strategy and influence their morale. After 40 days, the 12 spies returned, carrying with them a bounty of fruits, evidence of the land's fertility. They confirmed that Canaan was indeed a land flowing with milk and honey, confirming God's promises. However, their report was not one of unanimous optimism. 10 of the spies focused on the challenges, the fortified cities, and the formidable size of the inhabitants. Fear colored their words as they described the inhabitants as giants, comparing themselves to mere grasshoppers. Their report, fueled by fear and doubt, cast a shadow over the promise, planting seeds of uncertainty in the hearts of the Israelites. Caleb and Joshua, two of the spies, urged a different perspective. They too had seen the challenges, the fortified cities, and the strong inhabitants. But they also saw God's promise, the land offered to them as an inheritance. They urged their fellow Israelites to remember God's power, His faithfulness in delivering them from Egypt, and His promise to bring them into this land. Their pleas, however, fell on deaf ears. The Israelites, swayed by the fearful report of the majority, allowed doubt to eclipse their faith. They grumbled against Moses and Aaron, questioning God's goodness and his plan. Their hearts, once filled with hope and anticipation, now harbored fear and resentment. God's sorrow at their lack of faith was palpable. He had freed them from slavery, parted the Red Sea, provided for them in the wilderness, and yet they doubted his ability to deliver them into the promised land. Their lack of faith was not just an affront to God but a rejection of his love, his care, and his promises. As a consequence of their disbelief, God declared that generation of Israelites would not enter the promised land. They would wander the wilderness for 40 years, a year for each day they had spent scouting the land, until that generation perished. Their children, who had not witnessed God's power firsthand, would inherit the promise. The events of Numbers 12 to 14 offer profound lessons about faith, leadership, and the consequences of disobedience. We learn about the importance of trusting God's plan, even when faced with challenges and uncertainties. We are reminded that God honors those who are faithful to him and his chosen leaders. The story of the Israelites serves as a timeless reminder that our journey of faith is not always easy. There will be challenges, moments of doubt, and temptations to question God's plan. However, it is in these moments that we must cling to God's promises, remembering his faithfulness in the past and trusting in his goodness for the future.